Welcome. I called this meeting of the Northeast Independent School Health Advisory Council to order. This meeting is in compliance with Section 28.004 of the Texas Education Code and applicable board policy. The council's meeting today will address only the topics on the agenda. No other topic will be discussed during the meeting. SHAC meetings are open to the public. Guests wishing to address the SHAC may do so by emailing the SHAC committee at shac@neisd.net. That's SHAC@neisd.net. Any person that causes disruption during the meeting will be asked to leave. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you, and with that said, the first matter on today's agenda is...
We're going to approve last month's meeting's minutes. So do I have a motion for those of you that have all reviewed your minutes like you're good students? And so I have a motion on the floor
From Debbie.
for approving the minutes. Do I have a second?
Okay, thank you.
All in favor? Aye. The motion passes.
Okay.
Miss Jennifer?
If I can turn my mic is on. Hi, welcome. Thank you for being here again. If you're just kind of coming in, lunch is through the secret door. That's what I call it. I'm sure there's an official name for it. The one that doesn't look like a door. You're going to walk through the wall. There is a sign-in sheet back there as well. And some of you may have missed that when you picked up your food. Your name tag was sitting on top of your box, which hopefully made it a little bit easier to identify. But if you didn't, I think Katie is going to bring the sign-in sheet back out here a little bit later, and so that you can sign while you're in here and not have to go back in there. There's water and food, and we just want to thank you for being here. We want to honor your time. We know that this meeting is a bit of a continuation of last time, and so we definitely want to get moving and hopefully get through the two that we have. One order of business that we need to mention again is our next meeting is supposed to be, my battery's going dead. It is, but maybe the outlet's not on. Is that possible? Katie's going to figure it out. So our next meeting is supposed to be a subcommittee meeting online, but because this meeting, we are finishing our recommendations for our health and PE materials, I would like to suggest that our next SHAC meeting, the subcommittee meeting for April, actually again be moved to a full SHAC. I know that's not always the best because in our subcommittee meetings we can do that via Zoom. But the reason is Mr. Alex Vardell is going to go over the SHI with us. And I would like to be able to do that live so that we can ask questions if we have it. So that is my recommendation. I'll turn it over to you, Sean, to see if we can get that approved.
Yes, ma'am. So is there any objection from anybody in the SHAC to moving next month's subcommittee into a full SHAC? No objections? Excellent. Well, then if I can just get a motion to move the subcommittee to a full SHAC.
Debbie Frino.
And a second.
Rachel Brodeen, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
You two are so consistent. Thank you.
Rachel, thank you for taking over for me on the seconds this year. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. All right, then without further ado, we want to jump really kind of back in where we left off. And I believe Katie is going to start by just making sure everybody has all of the materials. And so she's going to walk you through everything that you should have. And then if you're missing anything, I'm going to run it to you.
Beautiful. There, put them right there.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. How are y'all? So one of the things that I felt we could have done better this meeting was actually more explain all of the things that we had given you last time. I felt like we gave you a lot, but didn't feel like we made the connections between them. I know you have your agenda in your minutes. So in the packet that you picked up from the back, or where you signed in, the packet that you picked up, the very first thing in there are the SHAC emails. Now, if you were at our last meeting, these are the same. There are 2 added emails. Towards the end of the packet, we went from the oldest to the newest emails, but there were 2 additional emails that were added. So this is a lot of these emails are the same. Again, if you have that from last meeting, we couldn't ensure that everybody was going to bring their things from the last meeting. So this is the packet of emails that were sent to SHAC of community feedback and information about the instructional materials. The next thing in your packet is the Commissioner's Health TEKS study recommendations. Again, these were given to you last time. We don't expect you guys to bring them every time, so we wanted to make sure that you had them again. When the new TEKS for the 22-23 school year were starting to be written, the commissioner has an entire write-up of the process of how those TEKS came about. What was the focus? Why did they choose certain strands? What does the strand actually mean? So again, you had this information, but it may just help give you some more background information. Again, I know we have some members that weren't here last time and here this time. The next thing in your packet is their health TEKS vertical alignment. So we are trying to put together a booklet and a packet for our teachers as we go into the next school year, since the TEKS are different. And this is kind of the setup of what we're looking at. It is a draft in progress as we go through TEKS and add them to this. This is specifically 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade, and Health 1, which is our high school health course. So you'd be able to see how those TEKS, what's the word I'm looking for? Align, thank you. How those TEKS align from the 6th and then as they go. And as we're going through, we are updating this, but this is where we're at this moment.
Will you explain why 7th and 8th is not in there?
7th and 8th is not in there at the moment because we currently do not have a 7th and 8th health class in the middle school. It is only 6th grade health. So we're trying to show this as 6th grade, and then when they move into that Health 1 class, where are those going? We do want to. That's why there's that gap is there specifically. The next thing in your packet is the physical education TEKS, K through 8 vertical alignment. So again, working draft, we have, and then the high school TEKS are actually attached to that as well. So you have the alignments of those so that when they come up into the different pieces that we're going to talk about, if there's one that you want to reference in a certain strand or whatnot, you have that. So I know that's a lot of paper and it's a lot of reading, but that is, again, if you were here last month, it is the same. We just tried to catch everybody up and have everything available. Also, in case needed, on the tables is a massive packet of paper, and this is the actual health TEKS K through 12, or K through Health 2, which would be that second health course that is actually in here. So we have in those health TEKS, we have started to put together the elementary vertical alignment. We started with specifically the one strand that most community members had questions about so that we could see that K through 5 progression and the information that's actually listed in the TEKS. But if you would like to have more of a comprehensive right now, especially for elementary K through 5, it would be the first set of TEKS here. This is partly why we're making these documents for our teachers, because this is hefty and there's a lot of paper. And so these are just kind of sets at your table. So that's the packet. Do I have any issues or confusion with what we've got going on there?
Does anyone need a packet?
Yeah. Oh, does anybody need a packet? Yes. I tried to catch everybody before we started. Beautiful. Thank you. So here you have your, Here you have your booklets that we gave you last time. I'm sorry for my instructions last time, but I forgot to tell you ahead of time that we do have to collect them because they do have publisher material in it that we cannot let you take. I appreciate everybody for giving them back to us, even though some people did write notes in them. So hopefully you got your booklet back. So thank you for that. So again, this has all of the information. If you start from the front of the booklet to, again, just kind of give a reference, we do have our timeline that we've mentioned for a few months now. The second piece, the publisher's Q&A responses, again, those were the questions that came out of our publisher's hearing, our publisher's open house, where teachers, parents, community members could actually listen to the publishers as they presented their instructional materials and ask questions. And then the publishers actually had a place to give their response. Along with that, behind that, this is one of the biggest parts of the reason the book has to come back to us, is because we didn't have enough instructional materials copy for everybody here. We wanted to be able to reference if a parent or a community member was, or a teacher was concerned about something in the books, we did try to find that piece and copy it. So You do have, like, if you notice the very first page in here, there's a pink 6 at the top of it. That means that one specific page from that publisher is referencing question number 6. So you can kind of see that as you go through. There's an 8 that's going to reference question number 8. So you can see what was the question based off, or what was the question in the instructional materials, and then actually the page or the activity or what is being referenced from that page in there. So that is the publisher's Q&A section. Also, at the end of the publisher's Q&A section, the very last piece, that is a piece of our training from our HSAE units that talk about where we specifically reference NEISD EHAA local policy about how questions should be responded if they come up with, like how questions should be responded in where should students find their information, that it should come from a parent or trusted adult. And that is where we are referencing that because it was questioned in the publisher's Q&A. So that's why that's not a publisher piece, but that is our piece from the district. We all okay up to now? All right. Last meeting, we did go through the voting outcomes for high school physical education and high school health. So in your packets, what we've done to help with our screen and making sure that you have enough time in the 6th grade, if you flip to the voting outcomes 6th grade health, you have 2 more stapled pieces of paper or stapled packets. Again, I know it's a lot of paper and a lot of shuffling, but you do have 2 more packets for you. And these are the rubric evaluation breakdowns. We had them in the slides, and if somebody asked a question, we could reference it. But what we did was actually print those for you so that you could see every single rubric question. How was it scored, or how was it scored on that 0, 1, 2 scale? The 0, 1, 2 scale for each question that our teachers answered on the rubrics. There were a couple rubric questions last time, so we wanted to make sure that for these last 2 that we're going to go through, you have those in a little bit of an easier access that you can find. And then the rest of the booklet follows the 2 pieces or the 2 courses, the 2 instructional materials that we're going to view today, the 6th grade health and elementary PE and health. So hopefully, if you also remember, there were those giant QR codes in your packets. Those aren't there anymore either. So we will have paper voting ballots today. But hopefully if there's anything that we'll kind of be walking around, obviously, during this too, to help out with questions or concerns, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better idea of all the things and all the papers that you've been given to help as you go through listening to the different recommendation or the teacher outcomes today. So, all right. Thank you so much. I will hand it back to Jennifer.
Don't go far. Thanks, Katie. You can see Katie and Brandon have been doing a lot of work to try to get everything put together for you. And we just wanted to over-communicate rather than under-communicate on this, just to make sure that we have all of the information in front of us that we need to do this. So I'm sorry for the trees that we killed. I know we killed lots of trees. Katie did mention the QR codes are gone. If you remember, we had some technical difficulties because of having to be on NEISD Wi-Fi or not. So we went ahead and just went paper ballots across the board, so they were the same. And you'll see we made a beautiful little paper ballot box that you will put your ballots in when we get to that time. They are color-coded to help us make sure that we put them in the right grade level so that we don't accidentally miscount. So just so that you know that you do not have those yet, we'll give those to you when the time comes. So going back to our last meeting, I know we have some people here today that might not have been here at the last meeting, and thank you for being here today. We definitely want as many voices in this as we can. We did have some time to review the Q&A for the 6th grade health last time, but I know it's been a while, and I don't expect that anybody has been studying this since our last meeting. So I want to give you time again to take a look. So you have this again in the handouts that Katie just went over with you. You can see our middle school campus representation as far as this is the people who voted, correct, Katie? Mm-hmm. So this is the people who voted. And so you're going to see that there's a little difference between voted versus submitted a rubric. So there are some things on there. So we just wanted to be clear. So in the middle, in blue, you can see those are all of our middle school campuses that responded for voting. And then to the right is the high school cluster, the high school campus that they represented. So while we may not have had all of our middle schools participate, we were missing, what is that red number? One. We did have 100% of the high school cluster represented in this vote. So here was our breakdown. So for our staff that voted for sixth grade health, it was 72% for Goodhart Wilcox and 27.8% for McGraw-Hill. Here is just a kind of glance at some of the feedback. Just as we asked you all last time when you made your recommendation, we asked for a little why this material over another one. And so these are some of the statements. We'll give you a moment to look over those. They are in your packet as well.
They have the full statements. They have all of them.
These are in your booklet, actually. Do you have a page number? We didn't number the pages. We didn't number the pages, of course. Live and learn.
But all of the comments are in your booklet. These were just some standout ones that we chose to put on the slides.
So this on the slide right now is not an all-inclusive list, but in your booklet, you do have all of the comments that were made.
That is all of McGraw-Hill's comments.
And that is all of the McGraw-Hill comments. That is the full list on the screen. Now, as you remember last time, the other thing we wanted to make clear was before we make a recommendation on the middle school health, we wanted to give an opportunity to address your questions. And we also wanted to give you an opportunity to look at the questions from the publisher's open house that referenced this particular set of instructional materials at this grade level. So you can see in your Q&A, questions 1, 2, 7, and 10 reference middle school. Somebody tell me if I'm calling out the wrong number because my eyes aren't necessarily seeing those tiny numbers. 13 and 14. What number is that? 18, 19, 20.
Yes.
Okay. And then you have emails in your packet that may reference the middle school health that we would refer you to take a look at before you make any types of decisions. So we're going to give you, I'm going to start my phone for 5 minutes just to get you started. If we need more time, I will check in with you at about the 4-minute mark and ask if you need a little bit more time to review and gather your questions. If you do want to write in your booklets, that's fine. Just put your name on the front. So if we need to give it back to you at some point, we can give it back to you. I don't want to stop you from writing in it. I'm an ex-English teacher. I have to write to process. So feel free to write it in if you need to. So we will check back with you. And I believe Katie did mention we had 2 new emails that came in. One came in like after we printed last time. So that's included in this packet. And then we had one that just came in this week. So in that packet of emails, there's 2 new ones at the back if you want to take a look at those. And then we'll come back in 5 minutes. Katie will answer all of your questions. And when all questions have been answered, then we will turn it over to Sean to take us into a recommendation. Okay, I'm gonna start my 5 minutes now. We have about 1 more minute. If you would hold up a number between 1 and 3, if you need more minutes. If you don't need any, you can just hold up a fist. I'm seeing 2. I am seeing a few 2s, so we're going to go 2 more minutes.
Okay, that's the extra 2 minutes. I think we are going to see if we can get this microphone working for questions so we can go around. But at least for now, I can at least repeat the question back. Or it's working? Okay, awesome.
It is working now. So we're going to open the floor to questions. So you have an option. If you want to raise your hand, I can run the mic. If you'd rather go speak at the microphone up front, you may do that. And then either Katie or Brandon and I will hopefully be able to answer whatever questions you have that you need answered before you're ready to make a recommendation.
The graphics here are really helpful in seeing the breakdown. I just had a question about the voting process. Is there a way to ensure those who are voting, whether they be teachers or SHAC members, actually review the materials? Do we have a record of that
Yes.
breakdown?
Yes. It's not included in your packet, but we do have the record that every teacher had to fill out a rubric for both Goodhart Wilcox and McGraw-Hill before they could actually be given a recommendation vote. So that is what happened with that one school. She maybe misunderstood some miscommunication, but she had only filled out one rubric thinking that that was her recommendation. And so once we figured it out, it was past the deadlines. And so she understood that she would not be receiving a voting ballot specifically. But every teacher, yes, had to fill out both McGraw-Hill and Goodhart Wilcox before they were able to vote. And SHAC members were not required to fill out rubrics. SHAC members were encouraged to use them to follow along. We did have SHAC members fill out rubrics specifically for the PE and health ones. I will look up the information specifically because I don't think it's actually in here, where we show each rubric evaluation where it shows this many secondary teachers, this many high school, middle school, and then SHAC members. But there were SHAC members that filled out a rubric, but they were not required to.
It is in their packet.
Oh, it is.
That's why we printed that packet. It actually tells you how many SHAC members filled it out. And again,
This one.
you all, as our SHAC members, were not required to do that rubric. Teachers were, and just to kind of clarify, the way that we ensured that is they were never sent the Google link to vote. And obviously we tracked as they came in from their email addresses that we tracked back that that was someone that we sent that to. So we did, but SHAC members were not required to do it. That's why the vote is happening here, but we're also giving SHAC members the opportunity to abstain from voting if they feel like they didn't have a chance to thoroughly review the materials, they can abstain.
And sure, hold on 1 second.
A follow-up question would be then that there are SHAC members here today who could vote on this material without ever seeing it.
Yes, and then they do also have the option to abstain if they did not see it.
Thank you.
So again, just to point out, because I don't know if everybody saw it, they're in this packet, specifically the ones that we printed for you. So you can see, like, oh, that's not that one. 6th grade, we do have reviewer participation breakdown. That first one will show you how many of each level, including SHAC members. But
Any more questions?
I was just looking back through the emails we got from our community and just wanted to kind of bring attention to that. As SHAC members, we all want what's best for our students in Northeast. We're also tasked with representing our community values, and each of our votes today should reflect the values of our community. We have numerous emails from parents who would prefer the Glencoe health adoption for middle school and who ask that the Goodhart Wilcox be rejected. This is not an exhaustive list that I'm going to read from, but it does touch on important issues. The Glencoe adoption presents actual information without using health self-assessments. In fact, a search term of the text of the term quiz results in one result, which is just the students making a quiz of flashcards on terms. This protects student privacy. In the Glencoe adoption, real-life scenarios present healthy choices to students who then back it up or expand upon it with information from the text. An example would be from Module 22, Lesson 3. Alex meets Bob, who invites him to a party. Bob tells Alex they'll have LSD at the party and encourages him to try some. No thanks, says Alex, I'm not into drugs. Students are then asked to write a paragraph to describe 3 safe activities that can stimulate the senses without the use of illegal drugs. So the text is actually telling them the healthy option here. The Glencoe text also promotes strong parental and family roles in students' life and decision-making processes. It says, by encouraging ongoing open communication with your parents or guardians and stating that students can rely on your family's support and guidance even as you become more emotionally and socially independent. A search of the term parent in the Glencoe adoption occurs 160 times. In contrast, the Goodhart Wilcox has several red flags. The material goes beyond basic health literacy and promotes advocacy with a heavy focus on self-assessments. The search of the term quiz results in 20 results. A quiz in Chapter 11 titled How Healthy Are You? Asks students, do you avoid self-medication with drugs to treat mental health conditions? These types of questions can pose privacy issues for students. The text also displays a shift away from parental authority. A search term of parents only results in 89 hits. In at least 2 instances, students are directed to outside websites to make decisions before gaining parental input. For example, on page 331 in Goodhart Wilcox, it says, go to the Al-Anon Family Group's website and click on the self-quiz for teens. Use your decision-making skills to determine whether Alateen is a group that might be helpful to you. In another one, it says the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration provides a locator tool that you can use to find treatment options. It may also be helpful to talk with a trusted adult, such as a parent or guardian, doctor, school counselor, or school nurse. So in that case, it's asking you to go to outside resources before going to a parent. In another warm-up activity entitled Ask Angelique in the Goodhart Wilcox, students are asked to pretend to be a social media blogger and give advice to a 14-year-old teen who wants to go to the doctor on her own and tell her parents she doesn't want her parents to go with her at the age of 14. I'm not quite sure what teak that is. Real-life scenarios are left to the student to decide the healthy option instead of being taught the healthy option in a Goodhart Wilcox. In a read the scenario, they want them to list the pros and cons from each person's perspective, share with a partner, and add to the pros and cons list. After reading the chapter, you can revisit and add or change answers. The first scenario. At the school dance, Kristen's friends invite her to meet in the bathroom to smoke marijuana. Kristen doesn't want to be left out, so she goes into the bathroom with her friends. The second scenario. At overnight camp, Maria's roommate pulls out a vape pen. Maria has never tried vaping before and wonders what it would be like. There are also concerns about the ability of the Goodhart Wilcox publisher to update the online text. This poses concerns about the content being changed, added, or deleted without any ISD board approval. Where would the accountability be?
Go for it.
The reasons I just outlined are compelling reasons from the community to reject the Goodhart Wilcox adoption for middle school and adopt the Glen Code for middle school health. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to just touch on a few of those points just for clarity. One thing that we failed to review today that we said at the last meeting that I want to make sure, I know I'm getting feedback here, is that any instructional material that we adopt is not taught in isolation. This is a resource. This is not the curriculum. So I do want to make that distinction. The TEKS are the curriculum. So no matter what material we actually adopt, we still have more work moving forward, which is going to be putting the lessons together and then sending those through you all again to make sure the actual lesson meets our community values. So whichever book, and this is not to say for either one, I just want to make this very clear. The TEKS are the curriculum. So there may be things in this book, there may be things in McGraw-Hill that we feel don't reflect our community value in the way that the lesson is presented in that material. And as a group, we will come back and say, you know what, we're going to rewrite that lesson in a way that it works for us. We actually did that with some current curriculum that we have. There were some TEKS that were in there that we didn't really like the way that instructional material address the lesson. So I just want to say that across the board, that is something that will happen. This is terrible feedback. That is something that will happen no matter what we go with. So I really just felt like I need to make that clear. And then I know Katie wanted to address because this kind of came up in the Publishers Open House, and it's that survey. This is going to be a prime example. I'm going to let Katie speak to that. There were issues with that type of activity previously in our health curriculum. So I'm going to let Katie talk you through what we did as a district to address that.
So that is a big thing that comes up, and there are TEKS that specifically do ask and do have students participate in self-assessments. But again, as a district, looking at what was currently, like what we're using currently in our curriculum, what the materials used as a survey, way back before I was even in here, they realized that survey specifically was not okay and not aligned with student values. So district values. So there is a survey, and we do survey kids, but it's along the lines of NEISD. It was a different lesson, and I'm sorry we don't have that specifically for you, but that is an example of how it's in a material. It's viewed as this doesn't align with what we believe should be or what aligns with our community. And so we're going to adjust it to align to our community so that it's there. I think that was the only one specifically. And so again, the same thing, like if there's a scenario even in our current health curriculum books or our health instructional materials now, it's not a book that's set out here, fill this out. It is, if that scenario is not something, then that's a professional development piece for our teacher saying, this chapter, this lesson, this is not to be used, this does not align with our values, and we will come up with a replacement.
Additional questions?
I'm curious as to, obviously there's teachers all throughout the district, but how can you assure that there's going to be conformity, if you will, or to where the teachers are teaching with the community's bias, or the community's I'm trying to think of the right word. Values.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that they're aligned with
Sure.
that, as opposed to a one-off based on that one particular teacher's
Let Jennifer speak to that one.
opinions.
Sure.
I'll take this one. And that is truly professionalism at its best, right there. What we will provide as a district for scope and sequence is by law what teachers must teach. And the TEKS are what we must teach by law. So to say that how will we guarantee that unless we can sit in every single health classroom, there would be, I don't think the word guarantee can happen, but it is through training. We will have a curriculum day at the beginning of the year. We will have ongoing training throughout to make sure our teachers understand here's the lesson. So we will be putting together scope and sequence. That scope and sequence will also have unit planning guides, and within those unit planning guides, here are the activities. So it is, and our health teachers do understand, so I want to go back to, I don't know what page it is in your packet, but that statement about any questions or anything that you get outside of the scope of our curriculum, the response is you need to speak to a parent or a trusted adult. And we will continue to train our teachers on that. And one of the things that we talked about, so it is in the booklet, is that right now in our curriculum is only a part of our HSAE training. And we spoke at the last meeting that we were going to add that to the entire health curriculum as a statement that says if something comes up, a question, that you cannot go outside of the scope of our curriculum. And if that question does arise, we have some training points on how to address those questions, but it is always to go back to a parent for an answer to that.
And to help flip through, it says, remember when answering questions, base your answers on what is in our curriculum. The facts, be appropriate and clear, use appropriate terminology, use your ground rules, don't share your personal beliefs or your personal information, and refer them to another appropriate adult if needed. Students asking questions regarding a religious or moral issue shall be directed to discuss the issue with their parents.
Any other questions on middle school?
Hey, Jennifer, just one more question. Can you guys speak to the accountability and evaluation of our teachers? I know you talked about you can't be in every classroom with every teacher, but what is NEISD's general practice and accountability and evaluation to speak to your point about where's the, I'm repeating myself, where's the accountability in that?
So all teachers are required to follow the curriculum. That is part of the Texas Teacher Evaluation System. And so principals and assistant principals are the evaluators of teachers. And if there were concerns that teachers weren't following curriculum, which this could happen in any content area. This could happen in English, this could happen in social studies, this could happen anywhere. If there is a question about that, you should be able to see, the teacher's going to post a syllabus. We are going to have our syllabus for health that allows a teacher to change and put their name and all of that. And quite honestly, because of the nature of health curriculum, ours is, for lack of a better word, a bit more scripted than perhaps other content areas. So the evaluation, so teachers are evaluated by their campus. If there were a concern that a teacher was addressing something outside of the curriculum, you would follow that typical chain of command. I would hope that you would contact the teacher first. You have access to the curriculum. You have access to the TEKS now as a parent. All of our curriculum is going to be available online as far as our end of it, our scope and sequence. We obviously cannot post the copyrighted material, but you will have access to that. You can look at the textbooks and you can do all that. So if there were a concern, I would say that the first thing would be you would contact the teacher. If it is not resolved in that way, then your next step would be to contact the administrator on the campus and have that conversation. Typically, Every teacher has a minimum of 2 walkthroughs a year, I want to say typical, and that involves 15 minutes. Lesson plans are typically required to be turned in. Most of our teachers now in our district, we have created time for what we call professional learning communities. So there is time for teachers to plan together. So that hopefully keeps one person as this outlier. Just part of being a teacher is that you keep your biases out of it. That's no teacher's job, is to teach them that and to stick with the curriculum. And so 2 walkthroughs of at least 15 minutes, I would say, coming from a campus just a week ago, because I've been in this job a week now, we aimed for 10 walks a week on our teachers, and that's at a high school that's very large with a lot of teachers, and we were pretty close to getting that. I don't want to speak for every campus, but I can say at my campus, and I can say my principal was doing 10 walks a week. And then there is a full 45-minute evaluation. Documents have to be submitted for your T-test. You have to turn in lesson plans. Now most campuses are asking to see PLC notes and all of that. So there's a lot of built-in accountability for teachers to be following the curriculum. And that is a whole domain in the planning. It's a dimension in the planning domain of T-tests that you must be following the curriculum. Your lessons must be aligned to the TEKS, and you have to provide evidence of that. Did that address your question?
It did. I mean, I know the process just because I'm married to a district employee, but I think it's just good for all of us to hear that, because I know the concern is, will this get taught at the level that every parent would want it to get taught at? And the school district does a phenomenal job of putting that in place. So.
And that will come very much onto us very directly. I say Katie, myself, Brandon, in how we train our teachers. And that will be a huge part of our curriculum day, which we are already working on and training our teachers on the TEKS, and we teach the TEKS, and really helping our teachers to understand the law around health, which is everything in the curriculum has to be approved through the board and reviewed by SHAC with their recommendation. So we do plan to train our teachers, and if they know that, they do understand that I have to stick to what's given to me, because by law there are some things in place with health that is different than any other content area. Luckily we don't have to review every content area's curriculum by law. Yes, ma'am.
So, from what I understand, it sounds like things that don't align from the text, you guys will rewrite the units and have training for your teachers. So it seems to me if the district's going to be spending all this money on a new adoption, you would want to go with the adoption that you would have to do the least amount of amending to, because in terms of professional development, rewriting those units, it seems like that would take a lot more resources.
I think it's the order of things. We will, again, I'm going to go back to the T-STAR curriculum, and once we have a resource, we will know which pieces we need to amend. We can't, and that is why the teachers were the main part of that review, right? And so we will, once we have an instructional material that we can use, then we can design that, have the SHAC take a look at it, do they agree with it or disagree with it, and then kind of go from there. So we can just basically go with, here's the teacher recommendation on the ones that, these are experts who've been teaching this content area for a long time. So we will cross that road. You're right, that's a lot of work on the three of us with teacher input as well. And we recognize that just comes along with health curriculum. Any other questions? I'm sorry, guests aren't allowed to address the SHAC. If there are no further questions, Sean, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we will pass out the ballots.
Yeah, so they're going to come around and they're going to pass out. The first ballot will be blue. And so, as we said earlier, these will be color coordinated so we get accurate counts on the 2 different recommendations that will be given today. So you'll take your blue ballot pen. If you need one, raise your hand. We'll bring you a pen, and mark your recommendation on that, and then you will you'll turn that back in to our professionally made voting box up here on the counter. So take a moment and review your decision and mark it accordingly.
Thanks for noticing that it was professionally made. I do want to point out on the ballot, you do have the option to abstain from voting. And you can do that if you are a non-voting member. Obviously, you're going to abstain from voting if we just handed you a ballot. If you feel like you don't have enough information, feel free to abstain. If you feel like you've not reviewed the curriculum, the instructional materials, not the curriculum, the instructional materials enough, you may choose to abstain. You also have the option to say neither. That means you've reviewed and you don't think either one is very good. So I just wanted to point that out. And you may stretch your legs and go drop your ballot in the ballot box. And if you did not sign in, please do so. Please make sure that you have signed in. I'm going to say one more time, please make sure that you sign in. That is where I add the names on our minutes as to who was in attendance. So please, 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 we put the sign-in sheet up there by the ballot box. Please make sure you sign in.
It is more for questions. My exact thought. So do you want to give them now? Yeah, I do it after. I mean, not don't count them. Okay. Yeah, we are. Oh, here. You're standing up.
All right. Well, hopefully that gave us a moment to also stretch. Oh, we're still working? Okay. Katie, are we good? Do we have all ballots? Okay. All right, so we are going to move on. We will, as soon as we get back to our office this afternoon, do the count. We will obviously keep all of those ballots on file, and we will share with the SHAC what the results were, the final recommendation from SHAC. I do want to just remind everyone of the process here. Again, we didn't say this at the very beginning, but we are making a recommendation. So our next steps and what we would like to do is hopefully we can do this by the April board meeting. If you look at our initial timeline, we're already a month behind. That maybe, we think we don't want to rush this. By any means, we don't want to rush it. But we do want to have materials for our teachers because in absence of materials, it becomes much more difficult to have that insurance that teachers are teaching the lessons that we want. We can no longer use materials that are out of adoption. So that's going to be problem number one. So in absence of materials, teachers tend to go wherever they can find help, which is often teachers pay teachers, which then would be very difficult for us to make sure that we are all on the same page across the board. So I just want to say that kind of as we're moving forward. So the next step is going to be, we will take your recommendations, we will take the teacher recommendations and present those to the school board, and then they actually make the final decision. So you are not making the final decision. You are saying, as a SHAC committee, here is what our majority vote was as a SHAC committee. That will sit side by side to what the teachers have recommended, and then it will be up to the board to make that decision. So if you think this booklet is big, wait till you see the board one that we are putting together for them. And so we would really like to hopefully be able to do that by April. Part of that is EMAT, which is where we have to order the materials from, shuts down for 6 weeks in April, which then backs us up on being able to order those. And if you haven't heard, there's a paper shortage. So we're really nervous about being able to get our print books. They're not just sitting in a warehouse. They're not going to print them until we can put an order together. So that's what we're looking at. And so those are the next steps. I just wanted to remind everybody those are our next steps. So we're going to jump to elementary. In elementary health and PE, just as a reminder, Quaver Ed was the only one that met 100% of the TEKS. So that is why it is the only one that we reviewed. Also, I just step back and remind you that TEA requirement is 50% of the TEKS for a textbook to be considered for adoption. As a district, we find that unacceptable, and any material that we review has to be 100% aligned to the TEKS. So Quaver Ed is the only one that was 100% aligned to the TEKS. This is a digital-only version. So this will only be digital licenses for our teachers and students. I do want to reiterate what I had said before, which is the curriculum is our TEKS. This is a resource to provide our teachers with materials. Why this one becomes important is in an elementary setting, it is the general education elementary teacher who covers the health TEKS. They are not necessarily health certified. And so giving them a resource to really help them with these things is important to us. This is more about the health curriculum rather than the PE, but it's all one bundle. So it's... They were reviewed separately. So PE looked at it from a PE lens, and health teachers and general elementary classroom teachers, which my daughter is one of them, reviewed them thinking, okay, I have to teach this along with all of the other things I have to teach. And so just deciding, and they had the option to say, we don't want this at all. We can just kind of do this ourselves. Again, I've already expressed my concerns on that. So just know that this is all or none. This is not something that we can say we want Quaver Ed for health, but not for PE. It's all one resource. Teachers will be able to differentiate what they would assign from a digital platform. So just to clarify those things as you look. So this one was a little trickier for review because we had to definitely involve more people because of just the setup of elementary, because we're not departmentalized. Currently, elementary students do not go to a health specials like they would for PE. So for PE, we have certified PE teachers who are teaching our students, but for health, it doesn't work that way. And so that's why this was a little trickier, and you probably see a couple more slides about people who participated in this. So just at a glance, you can see our elementary high school participation. You can see the campuses in the middle. I believe this is in your booklet. And then you again can see that we had 100% of our clusters represented by our elementary health participation. So this is health specific. Again, it's the same resource, but we asked them to look from the lens of either health or the lens of PE, right? Even though we know it's all one, it kind of gave us that. As with anything else, this resource would not be the curriculum. The curriculum is the TEKS. We will make a scope and sequence. We will make a year at a glance. We will make unit plans, and then we will recommend activities that go in there and are in alignment with that. So This was recommendations. This up here on the screen is not all of the comments that came along with the teacher recommendations, and you can see that 93% of our respondents preferred to have Quaver Ed over nothing. And these were all classroom teachers. So this was not PE teachers, because this was the health perspective as they went into it. And you can see some of those. All the full list of their comments is in your booklet if you want to review all of the list of those. So now let's switch to the PE lens. So in the PE lens, you can see our list of respond and did not respond. And we don't actually have the campuses that responded. Katie might be able to look that up if you're interested in that. But again, I'm going to go back to, we did have 100% of the clusters represented in this. And then here were the comments about the PE and what the teacher final recommendation was. So the staff final recommendation was 92.9%. Preferring Quaver over having nothing, again, which is kind of our option. And so we did have people who voted none. And so that comes up with a question, why? And sometimes, and so you can see on there, I did not see the adoption. And so we really appreciate that people said, you know what, I didn't see it, here's why. Questions that referred to elementary PE and health from our publisher's open house are questions 3 and 5. And then again, we would ask you to review those emails that were sent that referenced Quaver Ed or the elementary health in PE. So Quaver Ed, again, was our only option because it was the only one that was 100% aligned to the TEKS. And it is only digital. The good news about that is, we can tailor how we assign activities to our students, unlike a print book where everything is in their hands. So in your standalone handout, not in the packet, is the individual analysis of the rubric evaluations, if you are interested in looking at, so what did the teachers really say about the Quaver Ed resources. And so you can kind of look at that. I know it's little. I have to put my reading glasses on to see it, but we tried not to kill too many trees. So you have that. And so we want to give you, since this is your first time to review, by the way, so here's our reviewer breakdown. So you can see, I think this is something that we had asked earlier. You can see how many SHAC members reviewed. So this is not who voted. This is who reviewed the materials and submitted a rubric. Remember, you all as SHAC members did not have to submit a rubric. We do have records of everyone who came to review, whether they were a SHAC member or a community member. So we do have all of that. So we know who has reviewed. But this gives you an opportunity to see that for a moment of who submitted. So when you're looking at these, you know who submitted that information. So since this is your first time, I want to give you about 7 minutes to start. And then I will check in at the 6-minute mark to see how much more time we might need before we open it up to questions. Okay. Coming to the 6-minute mark, can you hold up a number if you need any more time? I see 1 more minute. Stop. All right, that's going to bring us to our stopping point to open up for questions as we move on to this. We do realize we are getting very short on time. We've already had some people who've said, I have reviewed the materials and I am ready to vote, but we still want to make sure. So Katie's going to go ahead and walk around and give you a ballot because we know you may have to get back to work. And if you feel ready to vote, you may go ahead and do that. If you don't, feel free to abstain from voting, and you can write that abstain. So she's going to get that, and we've put the voting box at the back, and we can stay for anyone who has questions. We will continue to answer your questions until you feel that you are ready to do that. So with that, we will go ahead and open this up to the first person who has questions, and you can either go to the front or I can bring you a mic.
Question was, I saw there was a teacher comment about concern with time to teach the health curriculum, and I wondered what the expectations were for the elementary classroom teachers to teach health.
Such a good question. What keeps me up at night? Told you my daughter's an elementary teacher, right? We've had lots of talks. The first thing that we're going to look at is a lot of these teachers are already being taught in elementary school. We just need to dual code them. Things like washing your hands. I don't know of a kinder teacher that hasn't taught that, especially in the last 2 years, right? We just need to let them know, hey, you're already doing this, continue doing it. And what these materials might do is just give them a different way to be able to do that. So we are going to bring in the elementary teachers to look at this and say, what are we already doing? And so that we don't worry about that. I am planning to schedule a meeting with Jennifer Gutierrez, our Executive Director of Elementary Education, to have this conversation about, I know our elementary teachers are already pressed for time. They already feel like they can't get everything taught. What can we do to help with the health? And whether that is perhaps we embed it into PE, but we do have resources if we still leave it in that classroom. So it's a good question. I wish I had a definitive answer, but it's on our radar once we are ready to start moving forward.
And also I will speak to that with like specific lessons. A lot of the health lessons included like song and dance. So where I just kind of made the comment, like, did you guys need to get your wiggles out? It's kind of the same to where you're teaching a lesson about washing hands, but they're actually up and making movements and doing the movement. So they're making that body-brain connection. And so that's a lot of what what a lot of what the lessons have. And so teachers can actually say, hey, we're going to cover hand washing, but I can actually get them out of their seats so I can utilize these lessons.
Next question.
And make sure it's on.
Is it on?
Nope,
No.
there's a button all the way kind of down the base of it. Right here.
Yes. It doesn't, it's not on.
So it sounds like the health has been kind of integrated already, like teachers are teaching health, integrating it into other parts of the day. And then for PE, there is no like that curriculum right now. They're just like,
Do you want to speak to that, Brandon?
is that what I'm understanding? What are y'all using for PE now?
There's currently curriculum, but there's not in instructional materials.
Okay, got it. So it looks like some of the comments and concerns were about using like screens and videos to teach PE skills instead of just actually like doing activities with the kids. And also I saw that a teacher mentioned needing more information about SEL, which I know is social and emotional learning, and also many parents brought that up as well as being concerned that being a component of this curriculum.
Do you want to get the microphone?
Oh, sure.
I'm going to talk on the SEL piece first, because if you look in the TEKS, that's actually a TEKS now. It is.
The ones that are in their packet.
And those are in your packets. That is a strand in the TEKS. So we are by law required to include SEL, which SEL has already been taught, but I think that there are lots of different definitions of what SEL is. I would encourage everyone to please take a look at that strand of TEKS to see what we are talking about. We are talking about things like teamwork, and some, just self-management, self-regulation, behavior. So that is something that we do have to teach, that is new in the TEKS, in our new TEKS that are coming out.
So for health specifically, it's the very last page of the health vertical alignment TEKS that you have. That is only the strand that is labeled social and emotional health. And then in the PE TEKS, I don't know the exact page, but the strand is on the side, on the left side. So you can see specifically even how the progression of the alignment of the TEK from kindergarten through 5th grade will show you how those progress.
What I do like about that being included in our TEKS now is it does give us some clarity so that we can have an alignment on what SEL actually means. So this doesn't leave it to interpretation on what we are talking about. When we talk about SEL, it is now spelled out for us by the state of Texas on what those values are that we are teaching. And on the PE, it's things like following the rules. It's things like my response when I get a bad call, and being able to respond to challenges in a positive way. So if you just kind of glance in those TEKS, those strands, so that social emotional learning goes all the way through the high school courses as well. So I do recognize that was in many of the emails, but I did want to point out that is now a part of our TEKS. And then the beginning question, I know there's concerns about the screen. I agree with that, and I would hope that in our training that what that would look like is perhaps on a rainy day when we can't have recess for some reason, the teacher can use this and show the video on a big screen like this and allow the children to spread out and do the dances and do those things, as Katie mentioned, to get the wiggles out. It actually provides our elementary teachers a way. Unfortunately, sometimes in August, that 102-degree heat becomes a problem. When we have those storms that come up or we have that very cold weather, our classroom teachers really don't have a lot of ways to help their kids with recess. So that was one of the things I know teachers were excited about. Yes, that is a video, but that's probably the best way for a teacher who has no background in PE to be able to help take kids through an activity-based lesson when they can't get outside for recess. So honestly, I see that being used more in a recess setting, those videos, than our PE class. I don't think we have any PE teachers who are excited about showing a video in PE. I promise that.
If we closed and went remote again, would be an
Alex said, Mr. Vardahl mentioned that the other good thing about the digital is if for some reason we had to shut down school for any reason, the digital components would definitely be helpful for PE and health. And I will say, I know that was very much a challenge for all of our PE K-12 on how do we teach PE remotely. So this would definitely give us, at least at the elementary level, a way to continue to instruct that.
I do want to also point out that our one of our district health services people point out, we do also have air quality alert days that'll keep kids inside. So again, another outlet for wiggles. And then I know Brandon's not right by a mic, but we do have students that may be in restrictive PE to where they're not physically participating, or they may be in a seated position, and it gives them a little bit of something extra they might be able to participate in. Thank y'all very much.
Well, and hey, one more thing. Since this is aligned 100% with the TEKS, it is good for those kids that have restricted PE, that have a doctor's note, that have to be sitting out for more than 3 days consecutively, that they can sit out and actually follow along with what we are teaching in our PE class. So that is another thing to be said about this Quaver Ed.
So rather than it being a completely alternate lesson, so if I have a cast on and I can't participate, at least what we could, the student could have an iPad and could follow along with the digital part of the lesson while the students are doing the physical part, so that they're still learning that material. I just kind of wanted to clarify what you were saying on that. So good point. Other questions? Turn it over to you, Mr. Metcalf.
Yeah, so you should have your ballots. They're the white ones. So if you'll go ahead and mark your recommendation, you may circle any of those that you choose, including abstaining, and then you will place those in the voting box in the back.
Yes, it's in the back, so that if you do have to leave, we completely understand.
Yeah, if you leave, please do not take your blue booklet.
Thank you for not taking your blue booklet.
You can take the other materials. That's not top secret information. There's no publisher information in there. It was the copyright issues with the blue book.
Jennifer, as they're doing that, and I know you guys can multitask, so we do have an amendment to the February 22nd meeting minutes. I believe Deb Caldwell's name was left off of the attendance roster. Everything else is correct. It's just we missed properly identifying that she was here at last month's meeting. So I just need a motion that we can amend the February 22nd. I need a second. Everybody in favor? Aye. And we'll amend those meeting minutes so that they are accurate.
Absolutely. I apologize for that mistake, Deb. Yeah. No, I probably overlooked it.
And as you guys are also finishing up, upcoming events, we did a little research up here. Actually, Sean did a little research. We were going to just say, find something to do yourselves. But Sean suggests there is the, did you say Ahmed? Okay. The next board meeting is April 11th, and the next SHAC meeting, as we discussed before, is April 19th. But enjoy finding things to do. And with that, this meeting is adjourned at 1:36. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at the next SHAC meeting in April.
Thank you for your attendance. Have a great day.